온라인으로도 많은 분과 호흡할 수 있습니다. 잠시 있으셨다면 핸드폰은 무음이나 진동으로 변경을 좀 부탁을 드리겠습니다. 그리고 행사장에 서 계신 분들은 저희가 정각 2시에 오늘 컨퍼런스 시작할 예정이니까 자리 참석을 부탁드리도록 하겠습니다. 저희가 이곳뿐만 아니라 유튜브에서도 많은 분들이 시청을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 아마 연사님들께서 강의를 하는 동안에도 채팅창으로 많은 글들이 올라올 예정이어서 현장에 계시겠지만 연사님들은 채팅창을 통해서 어떤 분들이 어떤 질문을 하는가라고 한번 보시는 것도 새로운 유튜브 중에 묘미가 아닐까 생각을 하고 있습니다. 저희가 정각 2시에 시작할 수 있도록 많은 분들의 협조 부탁드리겠습니다. 오늘 행사는 2시 정각 시작을 해서 마치는 시간은 약 5시경으로 예정을 하고 있습니다. 두 분의 연사님들의 발표 그리고 잠시 브레이크 타임을 가진 후에 저희가 강연을 한 다음에 다시 두 번째 세션이 시작이 되는데요. 공식적으로 3시경의 브레이크 타임 그리고 마치는 시작은 약 5시경으로 생각하고 있으니까 이동하시는 동선에 참고해 주시면 되겠습니다. 정각 2시에 뵙겠습니다.
And then we will have a joint Q&A and we will see you again at 2 p.m. sharp.
네, 함께하는 여러분들 반갑습니다.
So welcome everyone to this 8th Busan International Port Conference. I'd like to extend my warmest appreciation and welcome to all of you who are here on the venue and joining us through YouTube. And I'd like to introduce myself. I am Kim Jung-ah. I will be the MC of today's event, and it's a great pleasure to meet you all.
부산 항만공사 2013년에 시작을 했습니다.
Well, this event started in 2013, the BIPC, and now we are celebrating this 8th edition. But unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, that we live in a time of uncertainty, including these areas of politics and economy, society, and culture. So we are living in today with the bleak prospect for the future, but we are trying to find any signs of hope in this time of uncertainty. So the title of today's conference is the Life, Resilience, and New Life. So we are having this session in the hybrid conference because we are having this session both on and offline. But before we begin, I'd like to invite Mr. Nam Gi-chan, CEO and the President of the Busan Port Authority, to give us a welcome remarks. So let's welcome Mr. Nam Gi-chan with a warm round of applause. It's a pleasure to meet you, everyone. I am Nam Gi-chan, CEO and the President of the Busan Port Authority. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the 8th Busan International Port Conference, BIPC. And this year's conference is happening in a hybrid format. And especially, I'd like to extend my warmest appreciation to all the speakers who are joining here despite the difficulties. And they are Professors Lee Si-hyung and Professor Lee Hee-soo and Park Jang-yeol. And also my special appreciation goes out to Mr. Jeffrey Jones and Chairman of the Chair of the Board of Directors of the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea, and who has been with us for a very long time. I'd like to also thank Mr. Park Ino, who has become a strong supporter here in Busan. We've had an unprecedented year due to COVID-19, and uncertainties and the bleak future outlook in these areas of politics and economy, society, and the culture have led us to widen the topic this year. So this year's topic is being held under the theme of the life, resilience, and this new life. So we want to look back at where we are and where we stand. And we also want to have a deeper understanding as to this new world order and possibly look for these new opportunities. And earlier this year, because of the COVID-19, we have to drastically change the way of living. And we live in the time of non-face-to-face lives and surge of the nationalism and the low growth, economic growth. But also at the same time, we had to pause for a minute, and then we have to take a deeper look at the people and the lives around you. And in this year of tumultuous change and in the period of the weakening international trade, then we were able to handle the larger amount of volume at our port. And we actually proclaimed the authorities' emergency plan against COVID-19 to other port authorities and the international organization. And this response was recognized by the international community to be the best practice. So despite the changes, our lives have to be lived on, and that should start by meeting with this fresh challenge. So in the period of the pandemic, that we need to strengthen our solidarity and establish new values and visions. And we need to establish this new ecosystem for the international port authorities. So we would require this time for self-reflection and in-depth discussion. It is more important than ever before. So in that regard, I'd like to extend my heartfelt appreciation for all of you who are joining us despite the difficulties, and let's build a brighter future together. Thank you. So that was indeed the warm words of welcome to all of you who are here on site and here joining us offline. So please give him a warm round of applause.
남기창 사장님.
That was a very warm remark extended by the president of the Busan Port Corporate Authority, Nam Gi-chan. And in fact, the COVID-19 gave us an opportunity to have more close contact with and time with the family members and also friends. And in fact, in the middle of this COVID-19, we start to prefer one phrase that we feel closure even when we are apart. So today, through the YouTube and also offline, this offers a very good opportunity to meet various kinds of people. In fact, every early November, every year, during the BIPC, we were able to meet a lot of people from all over the world, but this time we may have to meet them through video. So let's watch the video.
Dear friends of Busan Port, I want to congratulate you on a beautiful 8th edition of the BIPC, and this is an extra special one. These are challenging times for all of us, so I'm extra impressed with the fact that you continue this conference right now in these times, because we need inspiration, we need each other to bring new ideas and to create new dynamics that will change this world for a better planet for all of us. I've always enjoyed joining the BIPC very much. I hope in the future we'll be able to join again together. But for this year, I wish you the best of luck. You've chosen two great topics with resilience and a new beginning, because that's what it's all about. So enjoy this 2020 conference of the BIPC, and hope to see you all again soon. Best regards from Rotterdam. My name is Mara Straatmans, and hope to see you soon again.
On behalf of the Port Authority of Thailand, I wish to congratulate the BPA management, staff and everyone involved in this successful arrangement of the 8th Busan International Port Conference. Over the years, PAT has always received good opportunity to join this conference, as well as a sincere cooperation from BPA, our ideal partner. We have been working closely to develop our port business in the most innovative ways and further new logistic business opportunity. I believe that this conference will again inspire the PAT and all participants to overcome the challenges and to actively guide the port industry for the better maritime community as a whole. Thank you.
Busan International Port Conference is an important platform for the shipping and port logistics experts, while filmmakers and movie fans look forward to the Busan International Film Festival every October. Shipping and port logistics experts look forward to the Busan International Port Conference every early November. No matter if you are from Busan, Korea, Asia, or the world, I'm sure you will find this conference enable us to connect, exchange ideas, and explore opportunities.
President Nam, colleagues and friends from the maritime sector, especially from Busan Port Authority. I am delighted to see that right now in these difficult times, Busan Port Authority has the courage to move ahead with the 8th Busan International Port Conference with a very suitable theme: life, resilience and new beginnings. Looking back at the conference from last year, where I had the opportunity and privilege to speak about our best sustainable practices in the Port of Amsterdam, I experienced a professional mix of relevant themes for the port and maritime industry, presented by excellent speakers from all over the world, combined with the warm hospitality from South Korea and Busan Port. So I'm sure this online conference will be as successful and important as the previous ones. From the Port of Amsterdam, I would like to congratulate Busan Port with this 8th Busan International Port Conference. Looking forward to see you all in the future when better times are there, hopefully at the World Port Conference of IPH. All the best, success and greetings from the Netherlands.
안녕하세요. 한국
Good afternoon. I am Jason Park, President of Maersk Korea. I would like to congratulate you on the opening of the 8th Busan International Port Conference. There are numerous conferences out there for the shipping and also the port industries. However, BIPC has been differentiated as it offers diverse insights in various sectors, including the international trade, AI, and so on. And it has been a great networking platform for the interaction with many renowned scholars. Good afternoon. I am Tatiana. Very nice to meet you. I would like, through the PIPC, I am able to enjoy the lectures and also the presentations by renowned scholars all over the world, especially at this time of great uncertainty. It is very important to keep pace with the global trend and also take leadership. And in that sense, I believe that the PIPC has been a very good platform for us to participate in such discussions. I sincerely hope that the PIPC will continue to evolve for the future. Thank you. I'd like to congratulate you on the opening of the 8th Busan International Port Conference. Due to COVID-19, the shipping and maritime industry suffered a lot, and also the international disorder experienced a lot of disruptions. But with the title of the Life, Healing, and New Beginning, we are now having this international conference for 2 days, both online and offline. I sincerely hope that this conference will be an opportunity to heal us and also give us a new beginning. And I sincerely hope that this conference will serve as a beacon of hope for the maritime and shipping industry. Thank you.
네, 박수 부탁.
Thank you very much. So why don't you give them a round of applause? For about over the past few years, they were with us, and through the video, we enjoyed hearing their messages. I sincerely hope that we could meet person to person in the not too distant future. On the chatting window, we also see a lot of comment from the audiences. Although we are having this online conference, still it's very good that we continue to have this conference anyway. Although the format of the conference is different. Do you know the title of this year's international conference? I think it's very encouraging. So despite a lot of difficulties, our life will continue to go on. And through this conference, I sincerely hope that we can have a good and time for the introspection. And with that, we actually prepared a video that may give you a lot of warmth. So maybe you could close your eyes when enjoying this video. So it's about life, healing, and new beginning.
Life, Resilience, and New Beginnings. That is the title of today's conference. Let us begin. So I hope that with this image that you might have felt the sense of healing and appreciation of life and the blessing. So in continuation of the spirit of healing, so let me introduce our first speaker. So we say this word quite often, Corona Blue, and we have this extremely famous psychiatrist who are here to help us heal. So let me introduce Professor Lee Si-hyung, or Dr. Lee Si-hyung, who is a psychiatrist and also the director of the Serotonin Culture Institute. So let us invite Dr. Lee Si-hyung with a warm round of applause. Hello everyone, I am Lee Si-hyung. So I am a psychiatrist and I am a very famous one, to tell you the truth. So the topic is the heal. So maybe that is the reason why I was chosen to speak for the first time in this prestigious session. So as you're aware that we live in a time of enormous hurt economically and psychologically. But as a psychiatrist, one consolation that I have is that in the period of COVID-19 and the global pandemic, that we have this fresh perspective of where Korea stands. And the global press are surprised to find out that how South Korea, had COVID-19 under a certain degree of control. And there is no panic buying, and there is no rioting. How come the country can remain in relative calm? So that is why many countries around the world are saying that we have to follow what South Korea has done so far. And because of COVID-19, then, well, we didn't actually thought a lot about the prevention. So there are two different types of medicine. The first is hospital-based medicine. So that is to actually heal the disease. And we are at the world-class level. But in terms of prevention, this is an area that we can do better. So that is why there are many events and accidents where we could have prevented them. Because once you're healthy, then it is easier to keep yourself healthy. But once you fall ill, then it could be extremely difficult to get back to your normal health. So in the area of pandemic, so many people are becoming more aware that prevention is really important, and keeping your ordinary health is very important. In the past 10 years or so that I have been operating this camp, specialized in the promoting overall health and promotion. And it has not been that popular in the past decade, but not so much. Then it has garnered a lot of attention these days. So whenever we turn on the TV, we talk a lot about the people fighting the virus and fighting the disease, and the doctors and this kind of virus control specialists talk a lot about how we can protect ourselves from this virus, but they do not talk a lot about prevention. Well, once we have the very strong immune system, then we could be a bit relaxed about virus control, because sometimes you live with the patient where then you don't get affected. Or even if you contract COVID virus, then it does not demonstrate a serious symptom. Why is that? Because people have a different immune system. So when you have a strong immune system, then we should not worry too much about the virus control in quarantine.
사태를 통해서
But in
예방이
the time
얼마나
of
중요하다.
COVID-19, that we came to have a fresh awareness of the importance of the prevention.
편해지면은
So the prevention, I'm not only talking about
건강이라든가
preventing
항공화라든가
from getting or the contracting this virus. So it has a variety of senses. Then you can remain younger, and there are 4 different elements of your immune system. So it has a variety of coverage because then every single element of your life will comprise of your immune system and immunity. If we just try to point out these 4 elements, is that the first is what you eat food, and the second is your lifestyle, and the third is the stress, how you deal with it, and the fourth is the extreme shortage these days that are exercise, physical exercise. So your immune system, well, it's 70% of it is created in your intestine. So it's really important to keep your intestinal health. And the remaining 30% comes from your brain. So that means that you have to always feel happy and pleasant, because when you feel happy and in the pleasant mood, then your immune system is boosted. So let's think of the reasons that undermines your immune system. Is that there are so many things within your daily lives that will undermine your immune system. Then it is not an over-exaggeration. So I've listed a number of elements that could affect your immune system. So immunity and the immune system is not something that's extraordinary, but it is part of our daily lives with or without us knowing.
자, 여러분 이게 많은 그 외신 기자들은
So international media
이런 말을 씁니다.
have said the Korean miracle quite often because the whole world is marred by this global pandemic of COVID-19. But how come South Korea is remain as is? It's because of a temperament. Yes, that we fare better in the time of chaos. When there was a major outbreak in Daegu, that everyone was really surprised. But we came back. We stood back on our feet. So we have an enormous amount of resilience. So even if it seems that we are at the brink of breaking apart, but we don't break that easily. So when you walk around the streets, then there are very few, if any, people who are not wearing the face mask. So people are embracing this new life as the new normal. And it has become their part of their daily lives. So I think it's kind of mysterious, and I feel quite thankful at the same time. And I'd like to pay my utmost respect to every single individual living in South Korea. And this immunity has a very long name behind it. Because there could be the different types of immunity. Then that's I call immunity and the neuroendocrine, and all of those kind of area falls into this wider category of immunity because it involves into the hormonal functions and the psychology. So there is very small part of your brain that is called hypothalamus that has an enormous impact on your immunology. And very few people are specializing in the immune system. Of course, I'm not an expert myself, but if I may contribute to stronger immune system, I can do it with this elements. I've told you that there are 4 different colors to the immune system, and the first is what you eat. And in the medical community, is that the Mediterranean food or the Okinawan food helps to boost your immune system. But post-COVID-19 is that the traditional Korean food can join in this rank, because the traditional Korean food, it has a lot of fermentation and it has this culture of condiment that use a lot of amount of 된장 and gochujang and the bean paste and the pepper paste. But we say it as a condiment. It is more like a medicinal condiment. So when you prepare your traditional side dish, you have to keep that in mind, that you are not just preparing another dish, but you're preparing dish of medicine. But there is one problem that we should be aware of, because agricultural produce, they have inherent problem because we use a large amount of fertilizers and pesticides, and that has led to degrade the quality of soil. So when we have visitors around the world, then it is as if we are serving them with the food that is filled with pesticides and other chemicals. And the body temperature really matters. And the Western doctors, they are not necessarily aware of the body temperature, but when your body temperature goes down by 1 degree Celsius, then your immune system deteriorates by 30%. So that's why I have another layer of sweater underneath my jacket. So you should not feel cold. You have to maintain your body temperature in the range of 36.5 to 37 degrees Celsius. But there are about 80% of Korean people who do not belong to this body temperature category, especially younger female. Their body temperature is at the 35 degrees Celsius range, but that has a negative impact. Your immune system is undermined, so thereby making yourself more vulnerable to the virus like COVID-19. So we have to be more conscious of being organic, going organic when we grow our produce. So that means that we can present our local produce with confidence because it is extremely healthy. And I've started this discussion about last summer of last year, and the like-minded people actually established an institution called the Mary Olga. So I've told you about the 70% of the immune system is from the intestine, and the 30% is from your brain. And I've told you about this small organ called hypothalamus. And when you feel happy and when you are healed, then your brain actually secretes serotonin. So when we say that you feel the sense of healing, then you have the serotonin overflow. So serotonin sometimes is called as a happiness hormone. So once you are at that stage, that your immune system is boosted. In recent days, the culture in the United States have changed quite a lot, and I believe that Dalai Lama played a very important role. And in the U.S., there is a New England Frontier Science Group. This is a group of young medical scientists, and they are publishing one of the most respected journals. And they have invited Dalai Lama and every 2 years and has conducted very extensive interviews and run through all these different types of exams. And they have found out something quite interesting is that Dalai Lama is demonstrating the symptoms and conditions that ordinary people demonstrate when they meditate. is that so he actually, or these young physicians and the doctors and the neuroscientists actually share their finding with Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama proposed them to go check the same or run the same exam to the monks meditating in Tibet, and they found the same findings. And they thought that their test machines must be malfunctioning because they cannot have this kind of same reading from all of these monks. But it turned out to not to be the case. So the meditation is not a mystery of the East. It is a proven science. So it was proclaimed at the early 1990s. And afterwards, then there was a big boom of meditation in the United States. So why am I talking about meditation? Where I'm talking about immune system. So when you meditate, then it actually stimulates your hypothalamus to secrete serotonin. And of course, the meditation is not the only way to boost your serotonin secretion. Of course, you can intake your medication, which is I do not recommend, because going natural is something that I want to propose. So I want to talk about several ways to that. Tryptophan is an amino acid that works as the precursor to serotonin. Of course, that not all the tryptophan becomes serotonin. It will require some elements to turn tryptophan into serotonin. First, you will require the sunlight. So the sunlight is a really important element. And the second is the rhythmic exercise. So walking at a vigorous speed is a very important exercise to boost your serotonin. And also the sense of closeness, your skinship. But that's something that you don't get a lot. Hugging other people, shaking hands, this is something that you don't enjoy as often as we did before in the area of COVID-19. So we say we live in the area of Corona Blue because we don't have this close personal contact with other people. Yes. So when you look at the right-hand side, is the serotonin actually secretes melatonin, that is a hormone that contributes to your sleep. So people around me actually walks a lot because to have a better quality sleep. Because when you walk around, then you have the serotonin secretion, and that also leads to the melatonin secretion, and you can have a better quality sleep. So for 20 minutes a day, then have a walk. Enjoy a walk under the bright sunlight, just 20 minutes a day. Then you will feel refreshed. Then you will have a good start of the day, and you can have this fresh mood maintained. And of course, your immune system can be boosted. And the people living in the Mediterranean area, they are very happy people generally. And what they do usually is that they just take a walk, whether you live in this urban area or live in the rural area, and they call it as passeggiata. And I was so envious of their practice. So having a light walk with people that you love after dinner, because that will be a wonderful technique to boost your serotonin and thereby your immune system. So the United States, this is the country that usually starts things for the first time. So I'd like to visit the Fifth Avenue of New York because that is the place where you can have a hint of what's to happen in the world. Of course, the U.S. went through many societal change. And I first visited the U.S. in the early 1960s, and that is when I started my study in the U.S., and that was when the hippie culture was at full swing. But nowadays, things have changed. That the American dream was pursuing things that are big. But in the 1970s and 80s, that the big American U.S. cars, they were competing badly against this small and economical and highly functioning Japanese automobile. And many U.S. automakers shut down their plant. So they now have a new realization is that the size might not merit that much. Maybe that is the reason why they have started this meditation, because they do not want to live in the world of complexity, and they want to live simple. Is that the CC movement have started as a cultural creative. So I understand that about 50 million people in the U.S. live in this sense of cultural creative that live simple. So there are other elements. You have to control and manage your stress better, because if you manage it poorly, that will lead to more problem. Is that the way to manage well is not to fight against it, because you let it be. Of course, you cannot welcome it, but treat it as if it's a guest that visit your place. Just let it be and wait until your unwanted or uninvited guest leaves your place. So while talking about stress, of course, that the meditation could be a very good process and procedure, because when you do the meditation, so there is a part of your brain's anterior cingulate cortex, and it actually initiates your greed, and that actually builds upon more greed. So the United States, it is a highly competitive world, because people involved in the same line of work, many people are paid like 100 times more than other people. And because of this meditation, then the circular cingulate cortex, it does not get stimulated as much, and you don't feel greed as much. So what I want to tell you is that the gods and the heaven has given us a lot. Many challenges and warfare of the Korean people. But these challenges actually helped us to be stronger, to be more resilient. And once again, the miracle of the Han River. But we say it casually, but we built this miracle with our blood and soul. So I've told you about the Korean diet. If we do it well, and if we build it to something that is more systematic, then we might be able to contribute to the betterment of the humanity. And we need to be closer to the nature, because look around us, there are so many greens around us. But if you stay away from it, then that has caused all of these problems, physical, mental, psychological. And there is one village in Costa Rica which is known for the longevity of these people. And the secret for this longevity is pura vida. I do not know what it means in greater detail, but what I understand that to be is to live in the nature, live with the nature. So our next speaker, Professor Lee Hee-soo, will talk about it in a greater detail, is that all the civilization will come to an end. This modern civilization is not an exception. It has these two vulnerability. One is the extreme self-centeredness. So let's look into what the leaders of the global superpowers are doing, is that they become self-centered. And we have witnessed the people who are self-centered become their national president. And because of this extreme self-centeredness, then want to become best at everything. So you have this extreme degree of competition, which cannot be sustainable. So, well, I think this is the time for me to finish my talk. I have 2 minutes left out of the time that was given to me, but I believe that it is a high time to end this discussion. Thank you, Dr. Lee. So, of course, we do have a lot of questions, but we have prepared some time slot for the talk concerts at the end of today's conference, and we will have a general Q&A session. So as Dr. Lee has said, is that boosting your immune system will be the key to lead your healthy life. And the serotonin, the hormone for your happiness, I believe that you have a lot from this presentation. So yes, that was a wonderful talk from Dr. Lee Si-hyung.
Following that, let me now invite the second speaker. So the first presentation was for the time for healing. Now the second presentation, I think, will be about the presidential elections in the United States, and also how it will affect the economy and how businesses can survive and thrive at this time of crisis. What kind of changes are happening in this international order, and how our lifestyle should be changed. So we would like to hear about the changes in international order brought by COVID-19, and the lecture will be delivered by President Jeffrey Jones.
네, 감사합니다. 마스크 벗어도 되죠?
Can I take off my mask? Thank you very much for your kind introduction. So we have many audiences here today, but maybe virtually we have even more audiences. Dr. Lee said that a lot of young people are joining us today, and that made me feel very happy. So I'd like to thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity to come to Busan and join this conference. I'd like to thank the president of the Busan Port Authority and also all those who have worked hard to put together this conference. And here you can see we can see many audiences joining us today. I'm not an expert in COVID-19, but for about a year, we have experienced this infectious disease. And now, I think everyone becomes an expert in COVID-19. We learned a lot, we felt a lot, and also we have built significant amount of knowledge for COVID-19. We now know how the viruses are transmitted. In the US, I think they are still in the process of studying. They are not really deeply aware of the importance of wearing masks, not as much as Koreans do. Maybe Korean people are very smart, or they have great brain, or they are very submissive. I don't know. And they follow the leaders. I don't know why, but somehow the Korean people, they wear facial mask a lot and very faithfully, and that helps the virus control and containment. So I'd like to congratulate you. The world had changed. About a year ago, at this stage, I talked about the international trade relations, political relations, and also the U.S., China, Korea, Japan relationship, how these international relationship will evolve. But now, in retrospect, you see all the things that I talked about were not that valid. So the title of my presentation is The Great Reset, not the Great Depression. It's not just a simple change. I think now we are at the time of Great Reset. So the world is temporarily closed, as the banner says here. A lot of people, I think, will agree that rather than having temporary shutdown, in fact, the COVID-19 forced us to have a new lifestyle and have a new mindset and have a new way of competition. That's the reality that we are facing. So regarding that, I would like to give you a few examples of various industries. Here you see the pictures of airports. It really makes us feel sad. So here you see that the airplanes that are on taxiway are ready to take off, but only 2 to 3 passengers are inside. And wherever airports you go, you see that there are always planes that are idle. And on the left bottom, you can see the JFK airport in the United States. Can you believe it? It was crowded by so many people, but now you see how vacant it is. And so actually, I think we are experiencing a sort of once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon. The airliners go bankrupt. The hotel industry is suffering a lot. Here you can see the occupancy rate, and it declined significantly. So hotels are suffering. And also the COVID-19 dealt a severe blow to the automaker industry as well. So, but while all the automotive makers are suffering, Hyundai Motor is the only exception that thrives today. And I think it's all thanks to the Korean people. But if you look at GM, Ford, Chrysler, you see, they're all struggling. So a lot of cars are on parking lots and not traded at all. And here you can see the restaurant sales. And the red bar does not indicate the growth in revenue, rather it shows the decline in revenue. So here you see that a lot of restaurants answered that they experienced more than 96% of the revenue drop in the last 2 weeks of March. But on the right-hand side, you can see a completely different picture, that the revenue is increasing for grocery delivery applications, and daily downloads are increasing. And here you see a new school that's emerging. A lot of the American students, they don't go to schools. They are having online classes. The universities gradually are making shift to the hybrid lectures, but the middle school, junior school, junior high, and also the elementary schools, they are all having classes online. So the children and students, you see, they don't have any chance for socialization, no chance for proper learning. Now, after 10 years or 20 years down the road, how will they grow, and what kind of adults will they become? That makes us feel very scared. So, in order to have a proper education, even on online platform, I think we really have to study hard and learn a lot. But at this time of crisis, still there are many winners. Companies that continue to thrive. So these are household names like Amazon. Amazon, it's having a great service for delivery. And the Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, he became the richest man in the world last year and this year again. So Amazon is growing rapidly, and also the Costco. Costco runs the storage type grocery stores, and they do have stores in Korea and also in many other countries. And because of the COVID-19, people do not go out, and also a lot of people cook food at home, and that increased the sales of the Costco. What about Coupang? That every Korean knows. You see that whenever there are gatherings of mothers, oftentimes the Korean moms say that without Coupang, they cannot survive, they cannot live. And I think that's not an exaggeration. If you agree, then why don't you raise your hand? You see, without Coupang, you cannot live your daily life. That's also very scary, but because it shows a very excessive dependence on the contactless interaction that became so prevalent in our societies due to COVID-19. You see that somehow our lives are confined to the small cell phones. Anyway, Coupang is thriving, and also Tencent, a Chinese company, they are also doing great business. They do have businesses in e-commerce, and also the finance, and all the financial transactions are happening with the mobile phone. Samsung, you shouldn't miss that. Samsung is also being benefited a lot by the COVID-19. The sales of the handsets, tablets are increasing at a rapid pace. So here you see that Samsung is actually making a silent smile at this time of crisis. They are enjoying a great sale. So you can see that although the COVID-19 brought a lot of difficulties and sufferings, it also gives the benefits to many companies. Now, what would be the secrets of success? How can we overcome this crisis? I would like to give you the 4 words as secrets for overcoming the crisis. So I talked about the companies that are thriving at the time of COVID pandemic, and in fact, they represent these 4 words that I'm going to explain from now on. So number 1 is convenience. You see, unless your products or services are convenient, your business will be doomed. Not just consumers, but companies. You see, they take great care of convenience. And therefore, the Busan port, in order to thrive in the future, you really have to focus on convenience. Without convenience, people will not visit you. If you bother them, then they will go away. And therefore, you really have to improve convenience. And why the convenience becomes so important at this time of COVID-19 is because I think people, they don't really concentrate. I don't know whether it's because of the mobile phones or the social media, but anyway, you see the people nowadays have a lot of difficulty in concentrating on one thing for a long time, and therefore unless it's convenient, then they just forget. And they try to do things quickly. The MC is on the stage. Are you giving me the cue that I have to finish as early as possible? No? Okay, then I will continue. Anyway, so whether it's product or services, or what kind of profession you have, whether you are doctors, professors, or lawyers, regardless of that, convenience is the king for all businesses. And next is scale. You have to have the economy of scales. With the small businesses, it's very hard to make success. And therefore, scale up is the next important thing for you to thrive. Your competitors are next to you. One of the secrets behind this Coupang's great success, in fact, they have not produced any profit yet. So they have existed for a few years, but they have never produced the profits. And Amazon, you see, or whether it's Amazon, they earn a lot of money, but for the past 20 years, they never produced profits. They never generated profits. But they're just expanding the size of their businesses and markets. So no dividend, but their share prices are going up all the time. And the same goes for Coupang. So what they do is to first build large scale of businesses, and after that, once they reach certain threshold, they will start generating profits. Now, next is speed. So you have to do things quickly. And I think that it really coincides with the Korean culture. Because Korean people do have the tendency to get things done quickly. But now everyone in the world is forced to be quick and nimble. And I think that that's one of the biggest changes brought by COVID-19. Speed becomes very important. And you can no longer put off the things. Rather, you have to do whatever you're assigned to do immediately, right now. You have no luxury to delay. The last thing is the technology. So digitalization is very important. If you're not digitalized, if you don't ride on the wave of this digitalization, you will be doomed. Whether it's the HR, the finance, the logistics. You see, every industry experiences digitalization. So there are always chief technology officers in every company nowadays, and also even hospital, library, and schools. Digitalization becomes a very important part of your business, and therefore, chief technology officers will be in every company in the not-too-distant future. Because only then the companies can have competitive edge. And also, after the COVID-19, our mindset had changed as well. Now, I would like to talk about what kind of mindset we should have to react to this pandemic. First of all, we should have a startup mindset. You know what startup is, right? It's a new business, the emerging business. So whether you were engaged in the business for 20 years or whether you just started your business yesterday, you have to have the startup mindset. Otherwise, you will lose your competitiveness. So what I mean by startup mindset, in the post-COVID world, action is important. So action becomes more important than research. People no longer have the luxury of thinking a lot for a long time. Rather, they are trying to do things quickly because they have to generate income as early as possible. And therefore, rather than having a lot of time conducting research, you have to take actions, immediate actions. Time is the essence, especially for entrepreneurs and business people. I myself am a lawyer, and long time ago, really long time ago. In fact, that was last year, but I feel that it's a long time ago. So a long time ago, when I was assigned to do a certain job, the client didn't really give me the deadline to finish the work. But nowadays, they become very different. For example, they assign me the task, and then in the afternoon of the same day, they give me a call and ask whether I finished my job or not. They're pushing me so hard. When I was waiting at the waiting room before the start of this conference, I had to keep using my mobile phone, sending a lot of emails and checking schedules because things are moving so fast, and I have to live up to that. So speed matters. And then the next thing is very important, but very difficult to be implemented. So that's the motivate your employees to be hungry. Sounds strange, but it means that you have to nurture the strong sense of urgency among your employees and motivate them to work hard and push their limits, because the world is changing at a rapid speed. And therefore, if your employees do not move fast, and if they are not nimble, then you will lose competitiveness. And therefore, motivating them to work hard and to be hungry is very important. And then the last but not least, the agile organizations. Korean people, we actually have very strong hierarchy in our society. And Korean people, they always respect people who are above them. So the Korean companies, they have very rigid organization structures with a lot of hierarchy. I think that the PPA is not an exception. In fact, we have to admit that every company in Korea does have that hierarchy and rigid organization structure. But we have to move away from that. So agile organization means a very flexible organization. In other words, the assistant manager, director, or managers, they are all participating in the same decision-making process and also sharing responsibilities. to get the company moving, the business moving. And this is pretty different from the Korean culture. But in Korea, we have like seniors and juniors, and we all believe that the juniors always have to respect seniors, but that will be detrimental to us for the future. Of course, if you follow that social rule, then you can pass your responsibilities, and you don't have to bear responsibilities, and also you can avoid a lot of mistakes. So you may think that that's a safe choice, but that will really hinder your development. And therefore, the reshaping organization structure is very important for Korean businesses to grow. My time is up, so I will spend 2 more minutes. Accelerate revenue opportunities. So we have to generate a lot of opportunities to create income. But we shouldn't spend too much time only thinking and conducting researches, because we are running out of time. So take action immediately. So we have to accelerate opportunities to generate revenue. Once you have the idea, just to put them into practice. Even if you make mistake, that's okay. You don't have to think too hard. That will be very important in the post-COVID world. So acceleration of revenue opportunities. And also the lightning speed of digitalization. That's another secret of success. So digitalization has to be penetrated into every business, every industry. Delivery services. Yes, Korea does have very advanced delivery service. Coupang Eats has not been introduced yet in Busan, but in Seoul, we have a lot of excellent delivery applications and services, including the Coupang Eats and the 배달의 민족, which was the #1 delivery application in Korea, but now the Coupang Eats overtook that. And it's because the Coupang Eats is faster than 배달의 민족. So we now have more users using Coupang Eats than 배달의 민족. And you can also see and track down on the motorbike movement and when will they arrive at your home and when you will get your products being delivered. So a lot of moms, they are sort of enjoying using the application and tracking the route of the delivery person. And also Coupang Eats has wider coverage than 배달의 민족. So this shows that the Coupang is a great company. They are very nimble and they are very fast in spreading and adopting digitalization. So COVID-19 actually recreate the world to be more speedy. I am now quite old now, so I thought that it would be great if I could take some time and enjoy my life, but the COVID-19 does not allow me to do so. So with that, thank you very much. Why don't you give the chairman another round of applause for his excellent lecture? I looked at the chatting window of the YouTube, and there were many comments that there was an interpretation into Korean, and Mr. Jeffrey speaks English, and also people complimented him for his great Korean. And he talked about the importance of speed and also many other things in this post-COVID world. And with that, in fact, a lot of audiences are joining us. And at the end, when the conference is over, we will have a lucky draw event.
자, 여러분의 부산 항공항공사
Yes, you're here for the 8th Busan International Port Conference. Then we will have a very short break. For the next 10 minutes, we will have a break so that we can have our stage and the venue refreshed. And we have this live streaming at YouTube, so make sure you share your comments. And those of you who are here on site, then we have prepared some beverages and snacks for you to enjoy. So the break will continue for the next 10 minutes, and see you soon.
세계 경제를 선도하는 동북아시아, 그 중심에 부산항이 있습니다. 글로벌 허브 포트 부산항. 부산항은 개항 이래 대한민국의 대표 항만으로서 지속적인 성장을 거듭하여 국내 수출입 화물과 세계 각국의 환적 화물을 처리하며 대한민국 경제 성장을 견인해 왔습니다. 신항, 북항, 감천항 및 다대포항 등 4개의 특화된 항만 시설을 기반으로 해운 서비스의 정시성, 효율성 및 생산성 극대화를 통해 이미 2017년에 컨테이너 2천만 TEU를 달성하였으며 이제 2030년 3천만 TEU 달성이라는 새로운 목표를 세워 글로벌 물류 허브 항만으로 도약하고 있습니다. 유럽과 미주 대륙을 연결하는 간선 항로상에 위치한 부산항은 세계 150여 개국, 600여 개 항만을 연결하는 글로벌 네트워크를 구축하고 있습니다. 여기에 최첨단 시설과 우수한 인력을 바탕으로 부산항을 이용하는 고객에게 365일 24시간 안정적인 해운 항만 물류 서비스를 제공합니다. 또한 초대형 선박의 출현과 글로벌 얼라이언스 재편 등 해운 환경의 변화에 선제적으로 대응하여 부산항을 효율적으로 운영하고 있습니다. 신항은 글로벌 초대형 선사가 기항하는 환적 중심 항만으로 우수한 항만 인프라와 넓은 배후 단지, 최적의 연계 수송망을 갖추고 있으며 북항은 인트라아시아 선사 거점 항만의 역할을 수행하고 있습니다. 또한 자유무역 지역으로 지정된 신항 배후 단지는 다양한 인센티브와 세제 혜택으로 고부가가치 물류를 창출하는 대단히 복합 비즈니스 공간으로 육성하고 향후 3만 TEU급 초대형 선박도 접안할 수 있는 최적의 인프라 및 부두 시설을 확대하여 양질의 일자리 창출 및 경제 활성화에 앞장설 것입니다. 부산항은 노후화된 북항의 항만 시설을 재개발하여 사람과 비즈니스, 문화와 예술이 공존하는 국제 해양 관광 중심 항만으로 변모해 나가고 있습니다. 친환경 워터프런트, 마리나, 방송, 전시 컨벤션 등 복합 도시 기능이 도입되면 매년 1,000만 명이 넘는 관광객이 찾는 신해양 경제 중심지로 탈바꿈하여 12만 개의 일자리와 32조 원의 부가가치가 창출되는 명실상부한 동북아 해양 수도로 발전하게 될 것입니다. 부산항을 세계 2대 컨테이너 환적 허브 항만으로 육성시키기 위하여 2004년 우리나라 최초로 설립한 부산항만공사는 제4차 산업혁명 시대에 발맞추어 끊임없는 혁신과 도전으로 최적화된 화물 처리 시스템을 갖춘 스마트 항만을 조성하여 깨끗한 친환경 녹색 항만을 구현해 나가고 있습니다. 항만 종사자의 안전 및 복지 지원을 통해 사람 중심의 항만 환경을 조성하여 국가의 자랑이고 시민에게 행복을 주는 부산항으로 가꾸기 위해 공기업의 사회적 가치 실현에 최선을 다하며 세계 해운항만 물류 시장을 리드하는 글로벌 종합항만 기업으로 뻗어나가겠습니다. 부산항이 물류 중심을 넘어 해양 관광 비즈니스와 항만 연관 서비스의 허브로 거듭나 신해양 경제의 중심으로 도약합니다. 아시아의 관문에서 세계 중심 항으로 글로벌 허브 항만 부산항. 세계 경제를 선도하는 동북아시아, 그 중심에 부산항이 있습니다. 글로벌 허브 포트 부산항. 부산항은 개항 이래 대한민국의 대표 항만으로서 지속적인 성장을 거듭하여 국내 수출입 화물과 세계 각국의 환적 화물을 처리하며 대한민국 경제 성장을 견인해 왔습니다. 신항, 북항, 감천항 및 다대포항 등 4개의 특화된 항만 시설을 기반으로 해운 서비스의 정치성, 효율성 및 생산성 극대화를 통해 이미 2017년에 컨테이너 2천만 TEU를 달성하였으며 이제 2030년 3천만 TEU 달성이라는 새로운 목표를 세워 글로벌 물류 허브 항만으로 도약하고 있습니다. 유럽과 미주 대륙을 연결하는 간선 항로상에 위치한 부산항은 세계 150여 개국, 600여 개 항만을 연결하는 글로벌 네트워크를 구축하고 있습니다. 여기에 최첨단 시설과 우수한 인력을 바탕으로 부산항을 이용하는 고객에게 365일 24시간 안정적인 해운 항만 물류 서비스를 제공합니다. 또한 초대형 선박
Welcome back, everyone. So we will begin part 2 of today's conference. So now you are with us at the 8th Busan International Port Conference. So we had a very successful part 1 of this event, and in order to honor the government regulation, we've had a short break so that we can renew the cleanliness and the sanitation of this venue. So the topic of today's session is life, resilience, and new beginning. So we were able to look back at a lot of different things, and the third topic today is how we can renew our perspective on COVID-19. And the last presentation will be about this new talent post-COVID-19. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite our next speaker. So this is the period of pandemic. So the message I'd like to share with us is that we should avoid feeling too panicked in this situation. So let's welcome Professor Lee Hui-soo, professor at Hanyang University. So Professor Lee Si-young talked about healing and resilience, and President Jeffrey Jones talked about the lightning speed. And now I'll talk about something extremely slow, because the study of anthropology, it is not a desk-bound study. This is the study about this culture and to try to study the culture and identity. And my areas of specialty is North Africa rather, and the Middle East. So I want to share my own perspective as to how the human life should change and evolve in the period of COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. So this is the picture taken as of now in Mecca. So 1.8 billion Islam population should visit Mecca. So usually you have a gathering of 3 million at any given time, but it is completely empty. So now we are struggling economically, and we need to focus on the more vulnerable. But this is the global phenomenon, and the whole world is experiencing something that is extraordinary. So this is the first spiritual and the religious panic that has never happened in the past 1,400 years. And they have started this pilgrimage with the social distancing. And this pilgrimage started only in a limited fashion for people with a disability and the vulnerable population. And it is a ritual when you have this services, because you have to have the shoulder to shoulder. If you have a spaces between these people, is that there will be the passage of Satan. So it is not allowed. But because of this extraordinary situation, then you allow the social distancing on the grounds that the Allah will appreciate the pandemic and the situation that we live in. So because of this mass consensus, then it is allowed. And the Ramadan was not celebrated, and that has never happened in the 1,400 years of history. Because of COVID-19, the tradition has been distorted, and it has to be completely changed. And it is happening in different parts of the world. And what kind of significance it will have on us? So the Korean brand, as was mentioned by Dr. Lee, and especially at least in the Middle East, it has the highest value at this moment, the brand of Korea. Circling around Iran, so the Korean drama called 대장금, it has the highest ranking, so the viewership was 60%. And last year, BTS, this boy band, actually had a concert in Saudi Arabia. And armies, the fan club of BTS, they were wearing this black hijab, and they were jumping around and enjoying this music. And this social change was brought about by the Korean boy band called BTS. So, of course, there are some controversies locally, but because of the dedication and the transparency of the medical professionals and the IT technologies, that we were able to handle the situation to a certain degree, that we were able to maintain a certain degree of human dignity and control the virus. So that has improved the national recognition and national status, and it has become, the brand of Korea has become very popular. So in that regard, then we have a golden opportunity. Biomedical, halal food, and K-beauty, and the pharmaceuticals, and cultural contents, and the K-wave. Well, this is the brief introduction into what is happening in the area that I've been studying. So let's look at the lives in the past century. Of course, that we were able to maintain the sustainable supply and demand in the war, and a large number of natural disasters play a certain role. So we talk casually about the World War I and World War II, but that was this indeed World War. And of course, there are some differences according to who to you speak to, but 78 to 80 million casualties happened during the World War II. Of course, there were large size scaled warfare like Vietnam War, and but it does not have any significant effect on the composition of the human population, and it has never happened before. In this era that we live in, then there would not be any nuclear warfare. I suspect that, and we will overcome COVID-19. And we believe that we can survive this COVID-19. So the large-scale warfare and massive pandemic is something that we can definitely overcome. But of course, there could be some limitations. As an anthropologist in the post-COVID world, I think we are at the historical threshold. So for us to maintain the sustainable supply and demand, then unless there is a fundamental change in the way of life, then how else we can overcome this global pandemic? So this is the time where we need to have this more fundamental thought process that involves a major change. In this area, then there is a rise in the nationalism, but if you look into the much longer human history, then the history of evolution is becoming face-to-face into non-face-to-face. In the past, that you have to hunt and gather, risking their lives. And when you barter, you have to travel a very long distance. So it was a strictly face-to-face economy. But let's think of how we live our lives. Is that we do home shopping, mobile shopping, and we do these virtual conferences and AI. So we have progressed into the non-face-to-face. And this is a very important course of the human evolution. Well, immediately after the independence, I visited Uzbekistan, right after Uzbekistan independent. So there were not a lot of TV in the village that I visited, but there was one TV at that village, and there were dozens of people who were gathered in front of the TV. And they didn't even have the term calling TV. So it was called Ainai Jihan. What it means was at the mirror reflecting of the world. So how amazing is that? Is that the world that you have to travel around to witness yourself, this is something that is reflected in the TV screen that they perceive to be a mirror. So it is still being used in Uzbekistan, Ainai Jihan. In the medicine, is that you do not need to have the conventional testing devices, but you do it in the endoscopic fashion, ultrasound and CT, so it is less invasive before. Then it does not involve as much physical contact as it did. So when we think of it this way, then it is just a natural progression of human evolution that we are getting less physical or the less face-to-face with the COVID-19. Of course, that the human history tells us that we have never overcame this infectious disease such as MERS, SARS, and AIDS, but we've had developed our own immune system and the global collaboration and the medical innovation. Then we have strengthened our overall immune system and some parts of the immune system to respond better to this viral infection. So far, we do not have any particular cure or the vaccine against COVID-19, but it would not be long before we have one. But because of this fear that we have closed down our national borders and we have to live in a haphazard fashion, but ultimately, through the international collaboration and the joint research, we need to overcome this challenge that the humanity is faced with. So, this loosely structured global collaboration system will soon be replaced with a more solid and more coarsely or a more densely created collaboration system. So we used to say that united we stand, divided we fall, but it is completely opposite these days. When we are united, then we fall, but divided, we might survive. But it will not last long. It should not last long. We have to get back with each other. And in the interim, the government intervention and control has become a serious problem. But Professor Jared Diamond, who is a well-known author of the Guns, Germs, and the Steel, said that this is just to intervention and control by the state is the price we should pay to live with the strangers. So going to the main part of my talk is that we need to have the depth in the soul searching for our lives, and we need to have a control of our urge, our desire, and that should be the new global agenda. So right after, ever since the Industrial Revolution, so thanks to the innovation that is fueled by the capitalism and innovation, that we were able to enjoy the times of abundance that is fueled by the mass production. But nowadays, this physical capitalism or the material capitalism is not a way to go. But we do not have any alternatives. So we are in the process of finding a new innovation and a new way forward within the context of capitalism. But in the longer term, we need to control our desire, and corporations should produce and manufacture in the right amount. So it is not a matter of choice, then it will have to be a necessity. So for the corporation, for the short time, will have to manage the productivity, and of course that they will not be able to shift far away from this trend, but we'll have to encourage the production and consumption in an appropriate degree and amount. Of course, that we've had many cases and examples and the remnants of what has happened in the past, but I'd like to share with you some of the tribes that I've studied. In Africa, near Tanzania, there is a tribe called Hadja, and they are very traditional tribes. They do the harvesting. And as the national park of Serengeti has expanded and their living space has shrunk. So to survive for a couple of weeks, then they will require the 2 boars, but hunting has become more difficult. So for 10 days, they were not able to hunt anything. But unless they hunt within the next 3-4 days, the whole tribe will starve. But there is a reconnaissance that there is a big school of boars nearby. So the 20-30 young men, went out and this 20-year-old young girl shot this poison arrow, and he was successful in hunting a boar. So there was a feast, and the tribe chieftain actually allocated the meat. But this young man, Angru, was crouching about 10 meters away, and the scholar actually asked this question. He should be a hero, and how come he is not joining this feast? Then you should treat him better. But they got angry. Is that man, that fella, received this social respect and this envy of all the people, and he has become the most eligible bachelor. So he has all this social capital, and it is unfair for him to join in the distribution of the physical goods that are made from the board. So this physical possession should not be the value of a human existence. So there should be some kind of balance between what you own spiritually, religiously, and the network that you have established with the people around you. It should receive more respect, and that is something that the humanity post-COVID-19 should think about. So there are Maasai tribe that lives next to in Kenya. So what I've shared with you is not confined to just one tribe. And Dr. Lee, in his own book, has actually stressed upon the Maasai tribe's self-reliance. When they go out hunting, the Maasais, that they do not create or to prepare the arrows before, because they want to prepare the weapons that will be just enough to hunt that day. Once you establish the target in the morning, then you prepare all these weapons necessary that will be right for the catch of the day. That is has been the tradition. So we often call them as the barbaric or the tribes, but maybe they are the most sophisticated one, striking a balance between the physical positions and their balance with the nature. So I'm originally from Seoul, the city, and sometimes I was invited to a small village called Aksaray. And I actually heard an old story from a grandfather living in there in Turkey. And there was this stranger passing this village, and he actually looked at tombstone. And he read the tombstone. Then this is the tombstone of people who lived, and when they perished, and the years that they passed away have been written down. But the longest year of our survival was 13 years, and the average life expectancy was about 7 years. And he got really scared. So there could be some kind of a disease happening, infectious disease happening. So it would be quite risky and dangerous to live there. So he moved to the next village and stayed there. And he asked about the village next to it. And what happened, that why people are living such a short lives. And he received an explanation that the people living in that village, then you do the evaluation of that day, that once you have the full and meaningful life or the meaningful day, that is the only day that you lived well, and you actually mark it on the wall. So when someone passed away, then his friends and the family actually calculate the number of days that he lived to the fullest, and that will be the life that this person has led. So we need to put more value to the meaning. So we need to have a more revolutionary change of your perspective that puts more value to something that is intangible. Because when we look back at our history, there are so many occasions where your desires were not controlled, and that led to some perish. Is that when you look at the year 834, during the area of three kingdoms, and the king that is during the King Hungdak's era, and it traded this largest amount of gold. So the gold crown that was excavated from the whole world, 80% of them was actually found in the land of the old Silla dynasty. So there were such abundance of gold in these luxury goods. And the king actually announced this decree that the government will restrict the use of imported luxury products. And it is as if we had the same or the similar financial crisis that we have experienced in the late 1990s. Then, how come all of those luxury goods, it didn't come through Busan because Busan was not a port city. So about 1,200 years ago, then there was sea lane or the maritime lane connecting Constantinople to Ulsan. So it starts in the second week of April. So it sailed through the Indian Ocean, through the Bay of Malacca. So after 6 months of sail, then you come to the Guangzhou, to China. And Hangzhou, that is the port that you start sailing to Korea. So during the fair weather, then you reach to South Korea within 10 days. And that also follows the current. And this is the route that are still being used. And we do have these records. So, according to the Evan Krudadvir, who is an Arabic geographer, and it was actually depicted in the 9th century. So it started from the Gulf Straits and through Hormuz Strait and to Malacca, and it reached Korea. So all culture were completely open in the 9th century. So it is historically in our gene and in our nature to be open to the world. So we should break away from this isolation that was imposed upon us because of this global pandemic and be a part of the global community. So of course, then from this threat, then you should protect your family, your community, your country. So the first instinct is to avoid having any contact with someone that you don't know. And in this situation, people might have large amount of hatred for foreigners, immigrants, those who are underprivileged. And it has happened before, is that Holocaust and Islamophobia in these kind of genocides and the cultural and historical tragedy we have experienced before. And recently, we have unfortunate incidents of terrorism happening in France. And the Holy Muhammad was depicted as naked man, the layman, or the homosexual. And it is such a cruel thing that are not appreciating this religious and the cultural heritage. And the hatred might lead to something that's extraordinarily sad and savage. And so that is why the COVID-19 is something that the whole humanity should overcome. And many historians and the philosophers these days said that the whole globe is something that are dynamically linked with each other, so we would require some more closer cooperation. So recently, Professor Kup Chun at Georgetown University, of course, the U.S.-China conflict is an immediate or imminent issue, but something that is inevitable is an equal and reasonable international order, because it is not a matter of choice, but a matter of survival. So these pluralistic societies will have to be a new order. And he is not alone. And finally, I'd like to share with you this beautiful tulip called Semper Augustus. So this is the most expensive tulip in the Netherlands. At times, it was as expensive as 100 million Korean won. What is unique about this tulip is that when you first brought in this tulip, then it cannot survive. Bulb cannot survive. But this tulip was unique because it survived the soil and it survived this virus, and it came out as this unimaginably beautiful shape. So if we cannot eradicate coronavirus, what we can do is that we try to find a way of peaceful coexistence. Maybe we can create something extraordinarily beautiful. So I want to share with you the spirit of Semper Augustus. So we should move away from this hatred and exclusion, but move towards the coexistence and the symbiosis and co-prosperity. I wanted to share this with you from the perspective of anthropologists, and hopefully you can have a fresh perspective in the area of pandemic. So yeah, that was indeed a beautiful talk that ended with the beautiful tulip. So once again, big hands to Professor Lee. So coexistence and the symbiosis and inclusion. Well, today's topic, well, I think it can be linked under the theme of the human. So we have this feedback from the chat room is that it was indeed a beautiful talk and help us to view this pandemic with a fresh perspective. So that concludes our third talk.
Now the fourth talk, it's more casual. It's about the human beings and humanities. So I think human beings, they are very, they have to be the focus, although the AI becomes widespread. And in that sense, we would like to invite the author of the Utility, so who wrote a lot of books on AI and human beings. So let us invite the author, writer, Jung-yeol Park. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I would like to greet you all, and also for those who are joining us online. In the Thames River, there is a court, and there was a grapevine in front of that court. But what's surprising is the taste of this grape was excellent, more excellent than the grapes nurtured and cultivated by professional farmers. So the biologist analyzed this grape vine and tried to find out what are the differences. And the only difference was that the root of this tree was widespread down to the bottom of the Thames River. And therefore, the vine was able to withstand the drought, and even if in a very dry weather, it was able to absorb a lot of water. That's why it was able to bear great grapes. So everybody wants to have blessings. Every country, every organization, they all want blessings. And they all want to prosper. So in that sense, they have to have strong roots. But what's problem is that the roots are not visible. So people tend to focus only on things that are superficial, that are outward. But we have to focus on the things that are more fundamental, that are not visible. So with the weak root, you can never have good fruits. And eventually the plant or tree will die. And therefore, if you want to build a prosperous future, you have to have solid, healthy roots. Otherwise, you can never bear the fruit of great prosperity. And in that sense, I would like to talk about roots. So when you have healthy, solid roots, then you will be able to bear a lot of fruits, and your success will continue in the future. A sports beverage company conducted a very interesting experiment that the athletes who show great performances, the company was trying to identify the common factors of the athletes showing great performances for a long extended period of time. And they found that unlike other general athletes, these high-performing athletes, they consume carbohydrates before the game and protein after the game. So carbohydrate, it's the source of energy. What about protein? It helps people recover from fatigue. In other words, the sources of power that we need is energy and recovery from fatigue. And we have to take good care of both of them in order to be healthy. So the sports beverage company previously focused only on functional beverage, but based on the results of this research, they actually upgraded their product that provide the carbohydrate before the game and provide protein after the game. And the product was a massive hit in the market. So we need both sources of power, energy, when we run fast. But while we are running fast, the fatigue will be built up in our body. So you have to have protein then in order to be recovered from fatigue. So the carbohydrate, protein, they give us the physical sources of energy. But inside us, there is a innate system inside our body that produces energy. When do we get energy? When we are doing something that we are interested in, or when we are acknowledged by others, we can have a lot of energy. You can even work all night, and you become very passionate. Then you will have some expertise that no one can mimic. In other words, you will build your own expertise, and once you have that, then you can build technology system. And the capacity to update and manage the technology system is what I call technology capacity. And therefore, our technology system and technology capacity enabled us to have very abundant, prosperous life. And for the human beings, this technology capacity or technology system can be described as talent. But at the same time, we also have the values and the purpose of life. And these are like recovery from fatigue. In other words, no matter what difficulties you are facing, if you do have the solid values in system inside you, then you can survive and you can overcome those difficulties. You can also surmount a lot of stresses, and you can make your life more meaningful with your own values, not the values that are inflicted by others. In other words, you do have your own values and your own targets, goals that you want to achieve in your life, and this will create the system of meaning. If you don't have the clear system of meaning, no matter how great technology capacity or technology system you have, you cannot bear healthy, great fruits. And what upgrades this system of meaning is the interpretation capacity. Technology must be upgraded, must be improved, but what gives value to your lives? What sets the orientation of your life? That's the thing that's on the other pillar. And the system of meaning and the interpretation capacity give us the gift of spiritual abundance, spiritual meanings. So this is what lies in humanity area. In other words, the energy itself is not enough. The recovery from fatigue is important, and you have to have both of the power sources. In other words, you have to have both talent and humanity. You cannot give up on any of them. You should have both in order to be prepared for the future. So I actually coined this term, hutality, that combines humanity and talent. Right self-management. So you run yourself or you run your company, and these are all about management. And right management is all about hutality. In other words, it's all about striking balances between humanity and talent. So, as I said earlier, I coined this new term by combining humanity and talent. That's why I actually put the addition mark here. But I believe that in real meaning, it's more about multiplication. So if any of these values become zero, then the whole value will be zero. In other words, if you don't take care of the humanity and if you just focus on talent, then the result will be zero. So where did you put weight? Where did you put your importance? I think that we put too much importance on talent. And that's a big problem. Oftentimes, the human resources are described as talent. So we do have the term like talent, top talent, and talent war. In other words, we tend to put talent before humanity. We tend to put a lot more focus on talent than humanities. But these could result in some fatal consequences. So if we keep losing balance in the future between humanity and talent with tilted preferences for talent over humanity, then we'll encounter two paradoxes. In fact, the human resources, these are the present and future of a nation, and therefore how we define talent is very important. But only with the current understanding or the concept of the human resources or talent, it will be very difficult for us to be prepared for our future and for what's coming. And also, we will encounter a very strange paradox that the richer, the more complicated things will become. So you may expect that if you become richer, if you become rich, then things will be very convenient, but the opposite phenomenon happens. So talent with great creativity, they may be the role model for all companies and every human being. But so every company wants to have talent with great creativity. But somehow we mistakenly understand that the people naturally have creativity. And therefore, if you look at the recruiting process of a company, you can see that oftentimes they select the ones who do have the technical capacities only rather than creativity. Here, the term creativity in Chinese character means new meaning that didn't exist in the past. In other words, the creativity means the ability of a person that builds a new meaning that doesn't exist in the past. So it's the ability on humanity side rather than talent. And so although companies want to have core talent, but they somehow mistakenly believe that the creativity is something that's given and so when selecting people, human resources, you see that you should focus not just on the technical capacities that the person has, you also have to think about the creativity that they have. Now, what's the result of the abundant life? The abundance begets complexity. Let me show you two different figures. You know what these are about? I will give you this picture as a hint. So the figure on the left refers to the world's obese population, and the figure on the right refers to the world's famine population. We are living in a world of abundance, material abundance. But still, we do have a lot of people suffering from starvation. Why? And also things got more complex, that we have increasing number of obese people, which incur a lot of social cost. People are suffering from the declining health, and also in order to reduce their weight, they have to work out, and it all boils down to the social cost. So here you can see that the material richness, the abundance, cannot deal with the problems coming from the shortage of richness or poverty. So the UN started the project to address the poverty, but it will be very difficult to achieve that. In other words, because we are trying to build economy and improve the economy in order to help the poor people, but we may have to have some different perspective, because the richer we become, the more complicated problems become. So a lot of talents, they have very low level of the ability to create new meanings. So with this talent management, we cannot have solutions to effectively deal with today's problems. So in the sense, we really have to rethink what kind of roots we have. And I think that this could be described with the human alienation. During the Industrial Revolution, we talked a lot about human alienation, but now we are living in a world of the Industry 4.0, but still we are talking about human alienation. What is human alienation? It refers to a phenomenon where human beings become alienated from the things that they create. So we are now seeing the emergence of AI technology, but at the same time, we are seeing the human alienation emerging. So all the materials and the cultures that we create with our abundance, they will further aggravate the human alienation. So in order to avoid that, we have to build a strong system to create meanings. That's why we now see the craze over the humanities study. So a lot of people became interested in humanities. So for example, like they work during the weekdays, and on weekend they meet and study humanities together. But somehow this trend was short-lived. Why? Because this craze over humanities study didn't really have the right focus or the right purpose. People wanted to show off what kind of difficult books that they read, rather than trying to understand the fundamentals of the human society. But as you know, the humanities study, it's not just about the great books or great authors. It's not just to make you smarter and more intelligent. Rather, a lot of philosophers and also the authors in humanities study, they talked about the system of meaning. That's the essence of humanities study, and by studying that, you can also improve the system, your system of meaning and your system of interpretation. So that should be the purpose of the humanities study. But somehow we had the wrong focus. Through humanities studies, you can upgrade and improve your system of meaning and interpretation. And I think that this will dive into the fundamental thought on your life and work. So everybody does have their own unique feature, their own interest, their own strengths, or their own values that they cherish. Or they also have their own mottos and targets for their lives. And based on that, you can identify the necessities of the world. In other words, you do have certain strengths, and you will realize in what areas the world needs your strength. So when you find out these two, then you can live up to the call of your life. And therefore, the careful and fundamental examination of your life, the introspection, is strongly required in today's time. All companies do have visions, and you have to see how you yourself are aligned with the visions of the company, and by doing so, you can decide which company you want to work for. For the self-employed, they will have the occupations in areas where their interest meets with the necessities of the world. And therefore, striking balance between humanity and talent, and also when we prepare ourselves for the future, we can have three words that we can follow in order to, let's say, light up the flame of vitality. So let me put it in this way: why-driven thought, end-driven, and context-driven thought. So you can practice applying these three types of thoughts in your day-to-day lives. If you build the habit of thinking in this way, then you can develop not just your talent, but also the humanity inside you to build a better future. So let me first talk about the why-driven thought. Our day-to-day lives are wrapped up by these three things: what, how, and why. Do you know among these three what will be the most prevalent? What? In other words, we ask a lot of what questions. What are you going to do on Sunday? What do you want? And next is how. How question. For example, in summer vacation, for this workshop, if there is a rain, then how are you going to do? If the person doesn't like your gift, then how are you going to do? So it's a how question. It's deeper than what question. What about why? You actually ask the least amount of questions that start with why. For example, why do you live? Why do you work? Why do you love that person? So in terms of the frequencies, why is the lowest. But what will motivate us most strongly? That all goes down to why question. In other words, if you could find out the answer to the why question, then you can have the strongest motivation. So that's the direction of motivation or power, and that's the direction of burnout. See, if you don't have the answer to this why question, why you have to stay up late doing this project, if you cannot find out the answer to that why question, you will be burned out and you cannot be passionate about what you are doing. But if you find out the solution or answer to this why question, then you will naturally find out the answers to the how and what questions. Next is the end-driven thought. What do these two pictures remind you? So the person is driven to the corner when he was trying to paint his room. And I think that it resembles our life. So you try to keep walking down in the journey of your life, but somehow you are driven to the corner. So when you live a life, you always have to bear this in mind. Some of you may think that I'm talking about the vision, but what I'm talking about is not the vision. Rather, it's about memory. And here what's important is not what I remember myself. Rather, it's about what you are remembered by your acquaintances. So the memory or the remembrance is more existential, I think, than vision. So people who live thinking how they are going to be remembered all the time, their lives will be different from those who don't think in that way. For example, like how do you want to be remembered by your family and friends? How do you want to be remembered by your colleagues? Or like after with the passage of time, how are you going to be remembered? I want to be remembered as most respected person by my family. My family knows me the best. My children, my wife, they know me so well. And if I could be remembered as most respected person by my wife and my children, then that means that I actually lived very successful life. And I want to be remembered as most sincere person by my colleagues whose inner beauty exceeds my outward appearance. So we take great care of our outward appearance, but oftentimes we overlook our inner beauty. But there are always people whose inner beauty is much better than the outward appearance. And if you could be remembered as such person, then that means that you lived a very successful life. My name is Park Jung-yeol, and Jung-yeol in Korean means passion and also alignment. So if I could be remembered by myself with an epithet as a person who has lived up to his name, then I will be very satisfied with by my life. So you can leave a will on your deathbed, but what's written on your epitaph is different from the life that you lived, then will become a laughing stock. And so, if you could live your life with this memory or remembrance, thinking about how you are going to be remembered, then you will have very rich life. Now here you see the two types of pizzas. What pizza are you gonna choose, left or right? You may say that both of the pizzas are the same, so it doesn't matter. But if I click one more time, then you will choose only one pizza out of these two. So these two pizzas are exactly the same, identical, but depending on what context they are in, they become completely different. So here the pizza represents the fact and the background represents context. Only with the fact, if you do have the interactions with the world, only with the fact, then you will have a lot of misunderstandings. Especially today, we are bombarded with massive amount of data. In the past, the only source of information for people was newspaper that they read in the morning. But nowadays, you are fed by a lot of information right after you wake up. So in order to have the proper understanding and make right decisions, you have to have the proper understanding of fact and context. Here you can see some paved stones, and you have to see them in context. Otherwise, you will never find out the truth. So what AI tells us is not the truth. If you rely 100% on AI, it becomes very difficult to identify whether the information that we receive is true or not. So truth reveals when you see both fact and context. So there is a saying that read between lines. So the era of text will go away and the era of context is now ushered in. And this is what AI cannot give us. So with your three thoughts, if you exercise your thought leadership, then you will be able to strike balances between humanity and talent. Before finishing, I would like to give you this story. During the World War I, the Hungarian search squad was missing in action on Mountain Alpes. But in 4 days, everyone returned safely. And the soldiers said that at first they lost hope, but then one member found the map and they were able to return safely. So the officers looked at the map that these soldier members used, And they were surprised. Why? Because the map was not about the mountain Alps, rather it was about mountain Pyrenees. So this example gives us a lot of inspiration. And the message of this story can be interpreted in various ways. But what I like to emphasize here is that in the future, you may face something that's completely out of expectation. And if you cannot address that, then your life cannot be guaranteed. I think these things will happen very frequently in the future. Now, here you can see what comes to your life. So the vertical axis indicates the complexity, and the horizontal axis refers to the time, whether it's present or future. Then you will have these 5 sections. So the simple, complex, complicated, chaotic, and ambiguous. Or disorder. So simple area. This is the area where you have experiences and where you have the known parameters. So in order to address problems in this section, if you sense and categorize the issues, then you can have right responses. What about the complex area? There may be some causality, but things are complicated, so you have to probe and analyze. So that's the complicated area. But the upper sections, these are about something that haven't happened yet. So there is no established causality. So here what you have to do is that you cannot sense the problems, and therefore you have to probe and you have to try and act. The previous speakers talked about the importance of immediate action. So for these future areas, areas that are about the things that have not happened yet, these are complex and chaotic. So using our talent, we will continue to develop AI, and AI will take care of the bottom parts. But the upper parts are the ones that human beings have to carry out. But one thing that regrettable is that the human beings are trying to give up and give these upper areas to AI, and they want to give control over these upper areas to AI. People want to ask AI whether they can get married to a certain person, whether they could be a suitable spouse, a husband or wife. This will aggravate the human alienation. So we have to take care of the upper parts. We have to take responsibilities for these upper parts, although the lower parts could be addressed and done by AI. So here you see the capacities that we need to deal with these upper parts is the capacity to create the system of meaning and system of interpretation. And only with this, we will be able to prepare ourselves for future. So in conclusion, we need to light up the future with futility flame, with the flame of futility inside you. And I believe that that will be the most noble challenge that we have to overcome.
강연이었습니다. 다시 한번.
So thank you, Mr. Park Chung-yeol. So I believe that you must have felt the same thing. Is that his last word? Is that how you want to be remembered? So I think that many of you who are here on site and who are joining us, YouTube, must have felt this. So that gave me a lot of food for thought, because I'm here as an MC, but this is a very important moment for me, because I was able to reflect upon myself. I was able to laugh and cry along with you. And people who joined in through YouTube said this a lot. So they say that it felt as if we are on site. Then it is good to actually have this moment being shared with us. And it is good to see the presentation real time. So we are getting a lot of questions and make sure that they are delivered to you. So those of you who are here on site and you must be watching the stage, then we haven't had any Q&A after this presentation. That was by design because we want to make sure that we use this time to the fullest. And we have received this question before. We have collected the question before, then we'll have them answered. And we are getting this question live from those of you who have listened to our presentation live. And now, let me invite all 4 speakers onto the stage, and please welcome all of them with one round of applause. So I would like to name them one by one. When I do so, please welcome them with one round of applause. First, let me invite Dr. Lee Si-hyung. Please give him a warm round of applause. And second, Mr. Jeffrey Jones, and who has dazzled us with his fluent Korean. And next, I'd like to invite Professor Lee Hee-soo, who has given us an insight. And the last speaker, Mr. Park Jang-yeol, the famous author. Okay. Is it the first time that you are meeting with each other? Have you had a chance to say hello? So I sense this sense of awkwardness on the stage. Would you like to say hello with each other? Okay, thank you. So we have collected some questions, and then want to make it short as possible because we are slightly behind the schedule. And Dr. Lee was the first one to speak, and he had to wait the longest time. So, Dr. Lee, are you ready? Okay, wonderful. So, I think this question is from 2 students, Yoon Soo-chul and Jung Joo-im. So, we say quite a lot about Corona flu and how this depression or this feeling of Corona flu is different from the conventional depression. So, do we really feel depressed? Yes, please go ahead. We say Corona flu, and in this sense of depression, how it is different from this conventional depression? Maybe the prolongation of it actually causes a lot of problem. Because the depression, clinical depression, well, if I were to explain it in the neuroscience basis, so the lack of serotonin actually causes the clinical depression. So the patients with depression, so the prescribed medicine is SSRI, selective serotonin receptor inhibitor. So if you prescribe those types of medication, that it improves, but it has a lot of side effects, and you feel dryness in the hands, and you have this tingling feeling, hand and feet, and some other side effects. Because of that, then you have struggled taking those SSID. So that is why I've discussed about this natural way to boost your serotonin. But Corona flu, I don't believe that it is an isolated situation, but it is the group condition because we have lived under the COVID-19 in the past 8 months. So everyone is actually frustrated and put down because we are fighting a war against the enemy that we don't see. And there is no knowing when it will end. So, comparing this clinical depression versus this Corona flu, these are different in that fashion. it is the group condition. But the so-called corona flu, if you give serotonin, will it become better? Not necessarily so, because it has little to do with the neuroscientific reasons. So will SSRI work? I don't think it will, because we're not talking about some clinical condition. It happened because of a completely different region. So I think it is a consensus amongst specialists of the corona blues and how we can overcome that. Yeah. So yes, that is not an easy question to answer to. But I believe that the key is your mind. Is that even if you're faced with the same kind of stress, then sometimes you feel that the stress will kill me, that there is no way that I could endure this. But some other people say that this shall pass, then I should live on. Then the future prospect will be very much different between these two groups of people. Is that when you are pessimistic, then there are more 40% more likely to be negatively affected by it. This so-called corona blue is something that all of us have to deal with, and there is no escaping from the situation. So try not to over-exaggerate it, and because this is something that everyone is struggling with, so try to deal with it as best as you can. So understand that you must have heard a lot of sad stories and people's pain and hurt. And do you have any secret of dealing with your own pain and suffering? Yes, I told you about the immunity, the immune system, but when it comes to the corona blue, so it is about extreme amount of stress. And the most important thing is to breathe. Remember to breathe and to breathe right. So you have to exhale with your mouth very long. So try to breathe out as if your tummy reaches your back. So once you have this deep breath, then you feel the sense of relief. So once you completely breathe out, then it is only natural that you have to breathe in. But breathe in with your nose. So I told you about the meditation, but the most important element in the meditation is to breathe right. So breathe slowly. And same is true for all these types of stress, that you have to breathe right. Breathe long breath, have a long breath, and have a gentle and slow breath. Breathe out and breathe in. And you use your belly or tummy to do so, then that can help you to alleviate this stress. Okay, the breathing right and meditation.
And Jeffrey Jones, I think you seem to have some fan club, the fan community. So you come to the BIPC every year. And there were many questions. One of them was, how could be so fluent in Korean? I'm not really fluent in Korean. If you keep your eyes closed and listen to what he speaks, then you feel that you are actually listening from Korean. But I'm just mimicking. And also, I have lived in Korea for a long time. How long? 40 years. So you're Koreans then. Do you have the Korean name? Yes. What's your name in Korean then? What's your Korean name? Jepil Cho. I think that sounds better than Jeffrey Jones. And the student Junhee Pae asked this question, that he's an international lawyer. So the question is, with COVID-19, among the changes in international order, what are the things that are good? There could be pros and cons, so can you point out the pro and con?
일단 가장 좋은 게 우리가
So a good positive change is that we become more convenient with COVID-19. Our lives become more convenient. So people, they don't want to change themselves. They want to remain in their status quo. But with the COVID-19, somehow the people are forced to change themselves. So I think that that's the big benefit that COVID-19 brought to us. People have to think outside box. They have to act in a new way. And then the negative one, I think, is the lack of interactions, face-to-face interactions. And I think that's the source of depression. You see, we all need to have time to socialize with others, have good, great quality time with others, but nowadays we are somehow isolated at our home. Right, with the COVID-19, the contactless detection is now emerging, right? Now, from the floor, do you have any questions? We will take 2 questions from the floor, but in the interest of time, let's move on.
So we have a lot of questions to Professor Lee Hee-soo. So you said that do not fight against the virus. And how can? Because there will be a more vicious virus in the future. How can we not wage a fight against the virus? The reason why I said that is that there has never been a chance that we fought against a virus. The virus were not overcame by humanity, just we live with them. Well, we have learned a way to do so, and the way to do so was, as Dr. Lee has mentioned, is to build the immune system, and we have to let the virus know that they have no fighting chance with the human. So they're not going anywhere, but they're there, but not necessarily as an enemy, but as something like a friend, because the virus has never been eradicated. We are living with them. So instead of perceiving virus as something to be fought against, and try to embrace it as much as possible to divert our attention. And of course, that we can collaborate with each other as we have done before. That maybe we can develop this vaccine or improve this immune system. But once we did that, then there would be the second wave of virus infection. Of course, that we are going through extreme difficulties. And of course, the vaccine needs to be developed to protect ourselves. But other than this physical and the medical solutions, that we can find our own solution by working together with other people and try to think differently to allow many different thoughts and many different things to coexist. So that's what I meant by that. So of course, these questions were actually asked by many by students. So after COVID-19, so what kind of occupation will become popular? So Professor Lee-soo, do you have any thoughts on that? Yes, I think the presentation by Park Jang-yeol, I'm completely in agreement, is that understanding a different value, people with a different value, or fixated within this your own category. So if you live on like that, it will be extremely difficult. So you have to keep open-minded, you have to embrace others, and you need to have these different types of perspective. So the people with those kind of perspective, that would be extremely useful. So You have to go back to the humanity, and you have to embrace others, and getting new insight and creating something new. That will be someone who will be competitive. But what is moving more welcoming is that this is the type of talent that the corporations are looking to hire. So I think it is more encouraging. So now there is a natural transition to our next speaker.
되겠습니다.
So this will be the last questions from the online audiences. So Mr. Park, in the era of AI, what kind of talent will be required? So what will be the source of competitiveness? As mentioned by the Professor E, I think we are in the journey of making such transitions, and we are in fact at the beginning of the transition. So put it simply, with the context, you see that based on your own unique features, if you could have the capacity to communicate with others in the world, then that will make yourself very valuable. In order to understand others, you have to understand yourself. You have to understand your own strength, your own interests, your own values, your goals. If you don't have the proper understanding of these, and if you encounter other people, you will have difficulty in understanding others. If you do not have sufficient understanding about yourself. And so if you believe that your technological capacities represent you, if you believe that your technological capacity is the everything about your identity, and if you live in such a world, then our lives will be worse, and things will become worse. And therefore, the ability to communicate with others, it comes from the ability to understand yourself. And only then you'll find out what areas need you. And by finding that out, you will be able to have the right job and write down the chapters of your life. So, and also at the same time, we have to have the organization culture and environments that recognize the creative resources. If we continue to maintain a very rigid hierarchy, and actually that's the fruit of the mass production. So if we continue to have the rigid organization culture, then we will not be able to find out resources for future, and we will not be able to nurture them. So, in the sense, again, I would like to emphasize the importance of utility. So these are not the areas that can be done by machines. Rather, the cognition, the insight, the consensus, the sympathy, these are the things that only human beings can do. Now, from the floor, I believe that there may be some questions. So do you have any burning questions? If you do, then please raise your hand. Then we'll give you the microphone. So we have 2 people raising their hands, 3 people, but in the interest of time.
So I'll be quick to Dr. Lee. So thank you very much for a great talk. So I'm taking the nutritional supplements, including vitamin C, omega-3, and iron, vitamin D, and vitamin D. So I take 7 or 9 nutritional supplements, but it is not always easy to do that. So the question is that if you were to go back to your 30s, then this is the nutritional supplement that will have. So what would you recommend? Okay. To boost your immune system, it would not be better if you take one thing over another. But our body values diversity. So you should eat right. That means that you have to have a balanced diet. So when it comes to the food intake, yes, this is something that is really important. And also, medically, so when you lack the essential substance, then you need to take these nutritional supplements. But leading the day-to-day lives, if you have a balanced meal, I'm talking about the traditional Korean dish, then you'll be fine. But I believe that he's taking these 9 nutritional supplements because you cannot have a balanced meal at all times. So I think this lady in the second row, would you like to hand the microphone to them? And yes.
So, good afternoon. I am in charge of corporate financing at the bank. I would like to ask a question to Chairman Jeffrey Jones. As you mentioned, the industry is changing and companies are changing. I myself feel the change a lot at the field. So when the pandemic occurred in March, at the time we worried about the economic crisis, but 6 months after, compared with the last year, somehow we have the increasing number of the clients, and also we have many startups with innovative idea. And startups are actually booming. And as you know, the banks, they are very rigid and slow to change. And also risk management is very important for banks. So do you have any advice to the financial institutions? I would like to give you one advice. The Korean government, from the past, they don't really treat finance as an industry. Rather, the government believes that the finance exists to help companies, and therefore they don't like financial institutions making money, because they believe that the financial institutions exist only to support businesses. And I think somehow these outdated mindsets still persist, and we have too many regulations, too strict. So one thing that I would like to recommend is that the government should change their mindset, that the finance is one of the industry that they have to support, and finance is the industry that they have to make money. And so by doing so, I hope that the Korean government could ease regulations. Then we'll be able to see a very rapid development of the financial industry and expansion of the financial services. Still one more people?
1분 정도밖에 남지 않은.
And we have only 1 minute left. So I want the question and the answer to be highly impactful and succinct. So I've just returned to work after the maternity leave, and I have an older children. Is that usually the summer and the winter break starts when the time comes for the teachers to about to go crazy. But same thing is happening at home, is that I am with my children 24/7, and that gives me a lot of stress, and same is true for my children. So my question goes out to Dr. Lee. So this non-face-to-face and less contact lifestyle will continue. That means that the stress will escalate at home. Then how we can deal with it? So the relieving stress, I told you about this deep breath. That is the rule number 1, the basic principle in the stress alleviation. So just try it right now. Then you feel much more relieved after having this big and deep breath. Of course, that this nerve system, there is no control over it, but we can even try to do so with the deep breath. So when you feel that you're stressed and when you feel tense, then have a deep breath, deep and long breath. Then that is the rule number 1. Then, of course, there are other techniques to alleviate it, but the first thing is to have a deep breath. So because of the time, that we will have to wrap it up. So before that, so will it help lose my weight? So the deep breath will help me lose some weight. So it's okay. Okay. I didn't expect much. So it is a drawing in with your breath. So if you draw in and hold it for 30 seconds, you do it 2 times a day, then it might help you because you can build up your muscle and you have this visceral fat. But with more muscles in your belly area, then it might help you. But the technique is draw in your tummy as much as you can. You have to feel as if your tummy will touch your back. So do it 2 times a day for 30 seconds. Yes, it might help. Yes. Okay, thank you. So I know that we have so many more questions to entertain, but because of the time constraints, I will have to wrap it right now. So I will have to ask all 4 speakers to go back to your seats. So please give a warm round of applause once again to all 4 speakers. So I'd like to once again thank everyone for staying with us for a long time. So we are here under the theme of the life, resilience, and new beginning. This has been day 1. And we have heard the talk on the softer topic, but the day 2 will be more specialized for the shipping and the port logistics experts. So the global shipping strategy and the future of port post-COVID. So the session starts from 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'd like to ask for your active participation. So once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. And that's a wrap for day 1 of a Busan International Port Conference 2020. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.